everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and happy Chanukah! Every night of Chanukah this year I will be sharing a new yarn dyeing video featuring different types of colors and techniques, and so join me here every night at 8:30 for a new color adventure. Tonight I want to dye a variegated yarn with different segments of color, and I don't really want to blend the colors together too much. And so I think I want to use a static dip dyeing technique. So that way we'll have a transition, but without moving the yarn constantly, we're not going to get much of a blend between the colors. And my goal is to create something fairly monochromatic. Let's go look at the colors. The plan today is to create a black, gray, and white colorway. And I'm super excited about this. So I plan to use silver gray for our gray, true black for the black. Both of these are colors that don't break. Some dye brands, their blacks may have little bits of red or yellow in it to help get the tone the right way, but neither of these break. And so that's why I picked them. But I also want to dye our white, and I want it to be a pure white. I want it to be a brighter white. And so therefore I am going to use Jacquard's optical brightener to give us that bright white. The optical brightener is not bleaching the yarn in any way. What we're doing is almost, I think what they call like a bluing almost. This optical brightener is a colorless fluorescent dye that can function as an acid dye when we're dyeing wool. And because it's fluorescent under natural light, it glows a little bit. It emits a little bit of light, making it feel like a brighter white. And this video isn't sponsored. I actually product tested this for Jacquard a while ago, a couple years ago, and I haven't tried dyeing a variegated colorway with it, and so I'm excited to see how this goes and to give it a shot. But now I need to put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves and start making some dye stocks. I weighed out 10 grams of our silver gray acid dye and our true black acid dye, and then dissolved them in some boiling water because that helps things go a little faster before bringing up the total volume to 1 liter to give us that 1% stock solution, where we have 1 gram of dye per 100 milliliters of liquid. For our optical brightener, I debated a little bit how much to use, but I decided to weigh out 5 grams of our optical brightener 4 times. This is because I plan to dye our yarn in batches of 400 grams, and even though we'll be dyeing about 1/3 of our skeins, I think that this 5 grams of brightener to maybe 125, 130 grams of yarn when I'm dyeing a portion of the skeins is a good amount, and well, I'm excited to see where this goes and how all this works. But I figured this is a good starting point, and unfortunately it'll be hard to tell how bright things are until the yarn is dry, and I'm not going to dry it in the middle, but we're going with it. We're going for it, and we're gonna have some fun. And since I measured out the optical brightener separately for each of the batches I plan to dye, I didn't worry about the volume that I dissolved it in because I'm gonna use everything in each container for each batch. Now, before we go and do our brighter white, which I know it looks very yellow, but this is fluorescent. It was really cool to see how it goes from cloudy, and these ones still need to dissolve a bit more, to being very translucent. But let's go and start the dyeing process. Today we're primarily going to be dyeing up 10 gram mini skeins of Wool to Dye 4's Platinum Sock and Platinum DK. All of this yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and I've bundled the yarn in 10 gram minis per bundle. And all the yarn is pre-soaking in plain tap water with no acid for at least 30 minutes, but more likely a couple of hours or even overnight. In this video, it's a couple of hours. Sometimes you'll notice, like on the right, I'm using brand new zip ties that have no color on them, and other times my zip ties, like you see on the left, may be a lot more colorful. This depends on the colors I'm going to be dyeing the yarn, and if I'm going to be using saturated colors or what. Occasionally, when the zip tie gets as pigmented as those dark green ones are, you can get a little bit of color bleeding from the zip ties onto the yarn. But if I'm dyeing a saturated color, that doesn't really matter or isn't really usually visible in the finished yarn. And so I reserve the more pigmented zip ties for when I know the yarn I'm going to be dyeing is going to have a lot of pigment in it already. For this project, since one of the colors we want is a pure white, I really don't want there to be any color transfer from the zip ties, so I used brand new zip ties on our mini skein bundles to avoid any transfer. Now, the black light is a very useful tool right now. So there's nothing in the dye pot currently, and when I shine the black light on, see how it's sort of like purpley? We're reflecting the like color of, the visible color of the black light back on ourselves. But now if I come in with our dye, and I'm gonna rinse out the cup, you can see the fluorescence and see that it looks blue even once the light like has a chance. And so this is a way that we can check and see how much that pigment has absorbed onto our yarn. Because unlike other colors, I mean, that's really the only way I'm going to be able to tell that anything has happened. I should have added, this pot has 32 cups of water. So I'm going to add, or sorry, 24 cups of water. 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. I am grateful that this pigment dissolved looks very yellow, so I'm not going to mistake it for vinegar or just plain water. It's a little thing sometimes, right? Okay, but now I'm coming over with 400 grams of yarn, and I'm adding the yarn in. I don't want to add much more than half of our yarn into the dye bath, but I want to let like the pigment access all of that fiber. Now, since we're going to be over dyeing the other part of the skein with our gray and our black, it doesn't really matter. Like in theory, I could add all of the yarn, but I don't want to. And the end, I'm leaning over the other side. I have a secondary container there because sometimes we'll get like a capillary effect, which is where some liquid will move up. But what I don't usually see is dye move up in that process. And just to show, you can see where there's like a line where that fluorescence ends based on where I put the yarn in. So in theory, I could have dyed the entire thing with the brightener before over dyeing it. However, I don't think that the brightener affects the texture of the yarn, but if it does, why add it all over? Why waste the product, right? And then the other, I guess, component is there's ultimately a limit of how much pigment your yarn or fiber can absorb. And so if we're hoping to get a lot of black on that other end of our colorway eventually, we don't want too much pigment over there because we want there to be space for that black to bind. But today is a day where we're gonna have to trust the process because we're gonna do this like bright white over and over and then I guess move on from there. So I think what I'm gonna do right now is set a timer for, gosh, I guess I may as well do 30 minutes because I don't really know how long this will take. And then we'll come back. I just want to note that after 15 minutes, after under 15 minutes, okay, we can see the fluorescence in the yarn, but look at what's down below. I can see like that purple color in the pot. So this color is all binding really quickly. I don't know how much time is actually required. That's why I'm gonna go ahead and do 30 just to make sure it's well set. 30 minutes is not a magic number or anything. It's just a number that I've found works pretty well. So it's my rule of thumb. But when we go ahead and do the gray, maybe I won't leave things for 30 minutes. Maybe once it's all absorbed, I'll feel okay moving on. But we're gonna do all of the fluorescent layers first. Okay, I am going to remove our yarn. Oh my gosh, there is so much water in the pan at the back. Oh my goodness. Now I'm taking the yarn and I'm putting it into a different pan, and I'll show you what we'll do over there in a moment. I guess I'll do nothing for now. Maybe I'll shift the zip ties on everything all at once. But I wanted to show off two things. One, maybe there's a hint left, but it's very different. And checking what is in the back pan, it does not look like there's any fluorescence in there, which, given that when we last looked at the yarn, there was an area where there was no fluorescence, I wasn't anticipating any fluorescence in that water. But let's go ahead and do our next one. And so just as before, gonna add the dye, rinse it out, stir things up, and coming over with our 400 grams of yarn. I'm holding the yarn in two hands and holding it a little bit separate, so that way I can dip the yarn in and get coverage and none of the minis are like stuck on the inside, if that makes sense. Hang that over and we can check how everything's looking with our black light. We can see that line of where the fluorescence ends. That is great. I'm going to turn up the heat a bit, and after 30 minutes I'll remove this and we'll repeat until I've done this on all of our yarn. The reason why I'm doing this in stages is so that way when we go and start doing the next colors, we know that there isn't going to be any like gray residue that'll get on the white section. Here is our yarn that we have dyed so far, and coming over with my black light, you can see, oh, we have some fluorescence in the zip ties, but the light is far away, but you can see that we have like a bit of a line where that fluorescence exists. Now, I don't think I necessarily see it with visible light, but you know, we'll do our best. And so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to take the yarn where the zip tie is and move the zip tie down. Now, I'm realizing I do need to bring the black light closer because I want to make sure that like our fluorescence is lined up on here, if that makes sense. And I don't want, say, half of the fluorescence to be on one end and then the other half to be at the other. So when I take it and move it straight down, I can just double check that things are lined up as well as can be. I mean, things are going to shift. That is just what will happen as time goes on, but we're just gonna do our very best. And when we go into the gray, we can also check to make sure that like the gray doesn't stop down here, right? We can make sure that the gray stops around where we have like everything else. Now, frequently this should not be an issue to get things lined up over here, but there are times where it could be a little harder. Sometimes the yarn shifts when you remove it from a dye bath, and so that is just why I want to double check. And obviously there's difference between the different skeins. So, woohoo! I'm 3 batches in, and a quick note to myself for the future. I'm feeling maybe not as much now, but there is a little bit more dryness as I've gone on, but also the dye bath is getting more and more of the pigment and the mixer in there. So maybe in the future I will want to swap out the dye bath in between different batches, but so far so good. But I'll try to remember to like see how this feels in the end. And so it's worth keeping in mind that It's not necessarily a textural difference if you're just dyeing one, but we'll see. And the yarn isn't like ruined or anything like that. It's just a slightly stiffness, if that makes sense. It's like after washing your hair but before putting conditioner on is the feeling that I have. For our gray layer, here we have 32 cups of fresh water. And I'm going to once again do 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. Now I'm bringing over 200 milliliters of the silver gray acid dye. Now I have a feeling that this has a similar pigment as the pigment that is in True Black. It's just that much less concentrated, which makes it easier to achieve a gray. Alright, now I'm coming over 400 grams of our yarn and bringing it in, going about 2/3 of the way down. Now, if I had black dye and was dip dyeing into it, ooh, we got some lighter areas there. If I had black dye and I was just dip dyeing into it, it would be really hard to get sort of this medium gray just because it would get dark pretty darn quickly. Yeah, I would say that is a good level. And I'm going to leave that there, put the yarn out, but I want to check. It's funny, you can see a little bit of the fluorescence through the gray, but I really just wanted to check. It's amazing how dark that makes things look. I wanted to check to make sure that our fluorescence was there on the white areas and that we went deep enough with the color. Now, I think part of me is wondering if I should have gone with even less dye than I did for this gray. Okay, so about 2/3 of 400 grams is about 266 grams of yarn that is currently in the dye bath. And we have about 2 grams, or I mean, we have exactly 2 grams of dye in there of our silver gray dye. So we have just shy of a 1% depth of shade of silver gray in there, which I think is completely fine. I'll have to think about how much black I'm gonna wanna use. And don't forget, when we use the black, we're gonna be dyeing just half of the amount of yarn that we currently have in here. So that is something to consider as well. But I think I'm gonna go for it. I could reduce the gray a bit, but colors always look more saturated when they are wet than they will when they are dry. So that is the other thing to keep in mind. But anyway, I will be back, and hopefully we don't have a lot of color or anything that'll get around the edge. I should make sure to wipe it clean before we do the next round. It doesn't really need to go a full 30 minutes, but you know, I feel like that just makes sense and is a length of time where if things aren't as hot or maybe are a little hotter is okay. Surprised it's not striking that fast. So, you know, we do have some lighter grays in here, but the nice thing is about there being some color at the very bottom is that that's going to all get covered up with the black, which means we're not going to have white peeking through anywhere. At the very worst, it would be a gray. So I will see you in I'll see you after the timer goes off. I did just realize that I have one of the 50 gram sets here. So we only have 350 grams of yarn that we're dealing with total this time. So another one will have 450 grams. It'll be fine. I'll try to readjust things in time for the black. And if not, it'll be fine. I know I keep coming back, but wait. What? Can you see how like right there, there's no fluorescence, and then like there is through the gray? Ooh. Ooh, people are asking me about layering the bright. I mean, I don't know what would happen if I layered black on the other side. Certainly it's still popping through some of that gray. Well, that's cool. All right, I have my tongs. I can't believe I messed up the total amount of yarn that I had in here, but that's okay. You can see we've got variation. Oh no, shoot. What on earth? Here we go. There was a strand that I didn't notice caught. Everything's okay, hopefully. Well, we know that there's still fluorescence through gray, so even if there was a little bit of gray dye that got on the yarn that went in, that shouldn't be a huge issue, and it doesn't really look like much. It's just, is the yarn gonna feel whiter? I do not know. All right, let's get ready for the next one. I'm not bothering to rinse out the cup in between because I'm measuring out more dye of the same color for each one. But as I go in, I'm going to try to separate the yarn as much as I can. Whoo-wee! And like move it around. So I know sometimes there's some areas that just will not get exposed. Okay, let's briefly set this aside. It's so cool looking down there. I don't know, it almost makes it look like there's like this depths and infinite going down. It's really cool. The fluorescence that is going into the gray, oh my gosh, the white balance. Maybe the white balance has just been off all along. The fluorescence that is going down into the gray may not be even on all of the skeins, but I think we are pretty good with regard to our coverage. You know what I did not do? I did not wipe the edge, but I feel like that's okay. Let's try to like make it so that way we've got more yarn at the surface. Because you can see like there's fluorescence that like comes down here and then there's just none down there. Wild, wild, I tell you. More to explore later. 30 minutes and I'll be back. Oh, and I don't think I had poured any liquid in from back here. There is only a tiny bit from last time because there's less yarn hanging over the edge. I was just filming and you couldn't even see. I removed 2 of the skeins. Here are the ones I just removed. Here are some of the other ones from before. There are some dark patches on those original. So yes, you know, it's lighter because we had the same amount of dye, but more yarn, but not like in a bad way. So I think we're fine. Because again, we have a lot of tonal variation in here and there's some deeper patches there that we didn't really have as much on the other side. So far, so good. I'm gonna dye up the rest of the gray. There is no prep work I need to do for the black because, you know, we're gonna be dyeing that section. The zip ties are in the right place. So we have no problems there, I guess. But since I'm here, that is cool. I wonder, I mean, I don't think we have any that's going down far enough like to be part of the black. So I don't know if that'll show up through the black. Oh man, I'm so curious because I know that mixed with pink, black, light blue, like the fluorescence kind of cancel each other out. But I'm amazed by how much is showing through. So cool, and that yarn is very hot. So, again, it'll be about an hour, I think, before I'm ready to get started with the black. Oh, but you know what I needed to do? Now that I'm thinking about it. That one's not it. That one's it. Let's connect these guys together. The reason why there's 2 that are 50 is one is DK, one is fingering. So, well, that's that. So the black should be fine. The water had been looking a little bit cloudy, so I started with a fresh dye bath of 24 cups of water and 6 tablespoons of white vinegar to dye our final color, the black. I decided to use the same amount of black dye as I had with the gray, and I measured out 200 milliliters of our 1% stock solution. But remember that with the gray we dyed about 2/3 of the skeins of yarn. With our black, we're only dyeing 1/3. So we're dyeing less yarn, but using the same volume of the dye stock. So already there's going to be more dye per area, but, and this is not something that I've highlighted in this video, but I've shown in the past, a depth of shade refers to the number of grams of dye per grams of yarn. And it's a comparison of one dye to itself, because a 1% depth of shade, 1 gram of dye per 100 grams of yarn, is way more intense if you're dealing with true black than it is if you're dealing with silver gray, because there's more pigment per gram in the black dye, even though you're measuring out, you're weighing out the exact same weight. So anyway, the black is way more intense, not just because we have more dye per yarn, and of course we're layering it on top of the gray, let's not discount that, but also because black is just way more pigmented than the gray. And I let it heat for 30 minutes, removed it from the dye bath. I actually had some yarn mops on hand in case I needed to put it in, but the dye bath was very clear, so no need to soak up any color. And then I set everything aside to cool completely so I could wash it. And I did end up leaving things overnight to wash, just because that is what my schedule allowed me to do. And if you're wondering why this is a voiceover right now, nothing nefarious happened. It was Lucas's birthday, and so he was home playing video games with some friends while I was dyeing this. Why did I want to create this colorway using this dip dyeing technique instead of doing, say, a lasagna or an immersion colorway in a pan? Because I did not want any of the color to go up onto our whitest section of the yarn, I wanted to use a technique where I could avoid putting that yarn in the pot as much as possible. Because anytime you're doing an immersion technique, there is a chance your colors could spread. Now, the black and gray do strike pretty quickly, but if I add too much water, maybe it could travel up and we could end up with a very nice pastel gray, but still a gray, which is not the goal for today's project. And so sometimes you just need to pick the technique that will work best for the colors that you want to have in the end. If our less pigmented color was, say, a blue or something else, then maybe I wouldn't have worried as much about some of the color traveling up. But if you are having a lot of differences in not just hue, but the amount of saturation of the pigment, then you may want to do something more dip dyed like this. Before I start washing this yarn and I realize my spin dryer's going, it's good! Can we just take a moment and appreciate the pretty that we have here? I still am curious to see if this is gonna feel brighter than just the bare yarn, but it's a fun colorway, and it would have been easier to do something immersion and to pour the gray on. It just would have been harder in an immersion situation to keep the gray from spreading up and the black from spreading up. And that might have happened, and then I would have been a little sad. So yes, it took a little longer. Now, another thing that would have made everything go faster is if I dipped the yarn until the color absorbed and then had like a steaming setup so I could steam the yarn to finish heat setting it. And that would have worked great and then made this take not quite as long. Eventually, I plan to get a steamer insert for my catering steam, or get some catering steam pans that have like a steamer insert that goes in. And in that situation, I would be comfortable doing this because I know that we wouldn't have our white touching the darker colors, and that would minimize transfer. And so, yeah, those are just all the things running through my head. But let's go wash the yarn. No, one or two of the minis have a hint of pink. Oh, I was so careful, but I must have had pink, a little pink on the tongs or on a glove at some point because I dyed with some pink in between doing the gray and the black. So, hey, if you have that little dot of pink, you win a prize! Oh, I was so paranoid and careful about not getting anything onto the white, and so therefore I am just amused. Now, I don't have a good record And I didn't keep track in any kind of way of which yarns I dyed first and which ones I dyed more towards the end. And so therefore being able to say, all right, this is where I have a textural difference and this is where I don't, is hard to say. Because, yeah, I don't know. But I'm very curious to see your experiences. Because right now, and it's weird, again, for something to be wet and feel like it's a little bit drier. I did use more of the brightener on this yarn than I did at other times. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to know what you feel like it feels like in the end. But so far, so good when it comes to color bleeding, or lack thereof. Yeah, now that I'm washing it, I don't feel it maybe as much as I did when it wasn't in the water, but you know, we'll see. And that could be a reason for not using the brightener all over everything, maybe using a little bit less. I did the math at one point, right? 5 grams. I mean, I would say it was between like around 4% when I did 3% in my last test, but I didn't really have anything else to compare it to. And now I have the other end of the yarn. So we'll see what it's like when dry, but I'm gonna put it in the spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and wash the rest of the yarn. Here is our dry yarn, and I don't think I've ever dyed something quite like it. I mean, if I hop into monochrome mode, you can tell actually. There's a little bit of blue in that gray that monochrome just eliminates. But I definitely have never dyed anything like this because of the fluorescent brightener. Let's take a closer look at our white. Are we brighter? Well, indoors, it's hard to say. I brought over a 20 gram mini of Platinum DK. And let's shift from having a lot of artificial light in the room to having less artificial light in the room and a little bit more natural light. There are areas, and like in here, I really feel that maybe feel brighter. But let me take this yarn outside. I'll use my phone to record so then we can see where it does feel brighter for sure. When I come outside, the difference is way, way more noticeable than when we were indoors. And I think I have one set of mini skeins and one set of stroll here. And this is a Platinum DK micro skein, but the same base as the minis, because that's what I had on hand. You can definitely see it in the shade, and I think it's easier for me to see that on camera and in person. In the sun, it was just hard for me to see anything. Indoors, I do see a hint of a difference, but it is a hair of a difference, not as dramatic as what I saw outside. The big difference, if I turn on the black light, our new yarn is fluorescent and our old one isn't, and that's why the white feels brighter. It's the bluing of it. And so then when you have light that has ultraviolet in it, then you're feeling that brightness. All my lights on in the room. If I turn the black light on, you can see it a lot in the gray, but the white doesn't necessarily feel like it's glowing, even though it is. It just looks whiter. And so that is the effect that this has. Removing some more of my lights. But see, the thing I'm excited about is having that fluorescent white. I think it is so cool. Imagine like doing a sock blank with a hidden message. Oh my gosh. Imagine, ooh, I don't know. There are just so many possibilities. And it is so fun. And the fact that we basically have a fluorescent gray, which I know we discovered already. And next to the white, it is definitely less fluorescent. And there are some patches in here of the gray where the white wasn't present. Like right here. That is gray dye. But the fluorescent white was not underneath it. So it looks nearly indistinguishable from the other grays under a white light. And under a black light, you can see that that one is not fluorescent. Now, this also gives us possibility for secret messages that are potentially over dyed. How much does this color spread? I don't know. We just have to explore more. Now there are sections like this one where I think that the fluorescent gray goes all the way up to the black, which means that I think that our fluorescent white maybe goes under the black a little bit. And with the black, we're not seeing any fluorescence there. There we have enough pigment that I think it just prevents that from happening. Now, obviously, if Jacquard's dye chemists could make any color they wanted fluorescent, what would be stopping them? Generally, a neon color are the ones that are fluorescent. I guess that's what we're used to the most. And while like a fluorescent gray is cool, if you were to tell someone that and then they saw a color that is very neutral, they would be pretty confused, right? But you can see how mixing this colorless fluorescent acid dye with blue dye gives us a fluorescent blue. It's just that ratio between the pigments is important. And we'll probably never get a good fluorescent purple unless a new molecule is discovered, because with this brightener, if we add pink to that, then it should dull the fluorescence. We've not tried that. That is something, again, for another day. And so if you want to see me do this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. But now I need to go and start twisting things up. Here are our full skeins, which are so similar, except they have a larger black area compared to the other yarn. I think, you know, it's hard to make a repeating colorway like this that's the same when you're dyeing mini skeins as full skeins without re-skeining one or the other first, so that way the lengths of the skein are the same size. Because if we consider, you know, the mini bundle, they're just shorter. And so if we have similar, it looks like we have similar white and gray sections, that means that our black is just going to be a different size. Now what about texture? If I go through and I feel the white and the gray and I feel the black, like maybe the black is a hair softer, but it doesn't feel crisp or brittle or dry. Some of those differences I notice when wet, I'm not really sensing dry. And so I am going to lean to you, and I wish I could set up a poll on this video, but I want to know if you feel like it's drier. Is it subtle or is it extreme? Because I do think that there is a difference, but I don't think it's one that bothers me, and I would still call it super soft. So I don't know. But now I'm going to go twist everything for real. I lied. I have to do one more. Yee! It's less vibrant when I have all the other lights on overhead, but oh, I love it. As we take a look at the mini skeins, and yes, of course, I'm going to be bringing out the black light again, you have to wonder, why do I care about so much fluorescence? Do I have a black light anywhere in my home? And the answer is, well, I mean, I have the handheld one I use for videos, but I don't have a static black light somewhere that allows me to see things fluoresce and glow. But whenever I go to, say, laser tag or go on a roller coaster and there's some black light in a room and I'm wearing nail polish or my shoelaces or something that I'm wearing glows, I get so excited. This is something that I just enjoy. And I think I also enjoy it because of how important fluorescence has been for a tool for understanding biology and things like that. And the fact that fluorescence is something that exists in nature and all of that, it just gives me this love and appreciation for it. And it doesn't hurt that I enjoy neons as well. And so I still need to make a fluorescent white yarn with pops of the other fluorescent colors. But, ooh, there's a side-by-side I should do. I should do that one that has been dyed with the brightener, one that hasn't, and see how each of the other fluorescent colors behave. Ooh, 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 ooh. Editing Rebecca is going to have lots of ideas to write down. Our little black, white, and gray yarn tonight is so fun, and I don't really think I've had anything quite like it in a Chanukah sampler before. That's right, there are Chanukah yarn samplers where you will have a 10-gram mini skein, dyed in each of the 8 main nights of Chanukah, wrapped up, labeled with the date, with some fun extras. And then there will also be a bonus 20-gram mini skein dyed in one of the nights to bring the total amount of yarn in each sampler up to 100 grams. You can find more information in the listing in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. I'll have it linked down in the video description. Speaking of fun extras, there is a mini little black light that you can use to look at your yarn, and you can see the fluorescence in the white and in the gray, but not the black. It's not as good for on camera, but it should work, especially if you go into a closet or something and remove as much of the natural light as you can. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications, because yes, there are 7 more nights of Chanukah, but the series is going to have 2 bonus videos dyeing full skeins of yarn. There'll be a behind the scenes vlog and more, and you don't want to miss any of it. And engaging with the videos is the biggest way that you can help support all of the content here. Now, if you're looking for other fun ways you can join to become a channel member, get fun ChemKnits emotes, and more, there's lots of things down in the video description that'll give you more information of where you can find me on social media and how you can support all things ChemKnits. And now, as we sign off, what do you think I'm going to be dyeing up for Chanukah night 2 this year? I'll see you tomorrow night! Happy Chanukah, and thank you so much for watching!